Once the video of me pleasuring 7 men went viral online, I became the cheating whore everyone spat on. My mom, Elizabeth Smith, couldn't take the news and passed away, while my dad, Thompson, lost his life in a car accident. Even in my last moments, I didn't understand how things had all started. That was until I returned to that day. Jules, honey, I told you, I was only giving her a ride home. It was dangerous for a young woman to walk home alone so late at night. Can we just drop this? Stop being mad at me, okay? Zachary Langford's voice came through the phone. It was word for word what I had heard in my previous life. I looked at the hotel entrance in front of me and couldn't help but shiver. I had been reborn. Jules, are you there? Are you really not coming home tonight? You know I'm going to worry about you, he continued over the phone. Why don't you tell me which hotel you're staying at? That way, I know where to find you if anything happens. I'm staying over at my parents' tonight. I cut him off. Leave me alone. I hung up the next second. Instead of marching into the hotel like I once did, I turned around with my luggage. In my previous life, I had a huge fallout with Zachary after finding a lipstick that didn't belong to me in the front passenger seat. Out of spite, I grabbed my stuff and spent a night at the hotel. For some reason, an explicit video of me spread across the internet the next morning. In it, I was pleasuring 7 men at once. I didn't remember ever doing anything like that. I ultimately became the cheating whore, cursed by all, unable to rest even in death. This time, I decided not to check into the hotel. Instead, I took a cab to my parents' house. When I knocked on the door and saw their familiar smiles, tears of sorrow began streaming down my face. I dropped my luggage and threw myself into their arms, choking out, "Mom, Dad." Mom had a heart condition and couldn't handle sudden stress. The huge shock caused by my scandal ultimately led to her death, despite attempts to resuscitate her. Dad had been driving to the hospital to see Mom when he got into that fatal car accident. In the end, he never got to see her for one last time. Mom drew me close and stroked my hair. Her voice was laced with worry. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Did Zachary do something to you? Whatever happened, just tell us. We're on your side." I nodded in Mom's arms, a determination forming in my heart. This time, I would do anything to protect my family. And so, I spent the night with them, watching TV and going absolutely nowhere else. We chatted late into the night before I finally called it a day and went to bed. I didn't stay at the hotel, and my parents were with me all night. So, there shouldn't be any problem, right? However, the next morning, violent pounding on the door jerked me awake. Zachary shoved his phone in my face. Fuming, he slapped me. "Julie, I can't believe you made up a lie to stay out just to sleep with 7 men. How did I never see what a shameless slut you are?" The last trace of sleep left my body as soon as I heard those familiar words from my previous life. "There's no way." "No way? Look at it yourself. The videos are all over the internet. The company's stock is plummeting because of you." A chill ran down my spine as the same footage from my previous life played before my eyes. The comments were just as vicious. "Look at the CEO's wife go, screwing 7 men at once. She's young and wild, all right. There must be a reason she was so thirsty. Maybe her husband couldn't get it up. Judging from her loud moans, it doesn't look like 7 men was enough to satisfy her. I can do better than them. I'll give it to her so good that she'll roll her eyes and can't even make a sound. You'd want a woman like that? You're asking to get infected." The more I read, the colder I felt. Some of them had doxed me, leaking my personal information and my family's address. Others turned my photos into reaction images and spread them. My body shivered as I read the malicious comments. This didn't make any sense. I was home all night with my parents, so where did this video come from? I was confident I never stepped out once. Just like in my previous life, Zachary wouldn't believe a single word coming out of my mouth. My heart twisted with pain as I thought about our 7 years of marriage. My parents had gone to work, so they couldn't vouch for me. In the end, I turned to the police. The officers brought us to the hotel and retrieved the surveillance footage. To my dismay, the investigation result was the same as in my previous life. The camera clearly captured me walking into the hotel. Although the woman wore a mask, She did remove it briefly during check-in and had a face uncannily similar to mine. Later, 7 men entered my hotel room one after another, all of whom were welcomed by me. At one point, while engaging in such indecent acts, I went to get the door for one of the men in my birthday suit. After some verifications, the officer confirmed that both the surveillance footage and the videos online were unaltered, with no signs of a deepfake. Zachary slammed the table in a fit of rage. "I can't believe my wife of 7 years is a whore," he bellowed. "Julie, I gave you my heart, my everything, and this is how you reciprocate my love." I bit my lip hard, trying to recall every little detail in both the current and previous lives. As long as I could pinpoint an inconsistency, maybe I had a way to get out of this doomed fate. Out of nervousness, I had been subconsciously gripping my arm. When I finally let go, a red mark remained. In that instant, a thought hit me and I gasped. "Look, there's not a single mark on my body," I exclaimed. "If I had really slept with those men last night, how are there no traces of them at all?" The videos could be deep fakes, but the non-existent marks on my body couldn't lie. In my previous life, I had indeed checked into the hotel and woken up the next morning with red marks all over my body. At that time, I hadn't been able to defend myself. I had even suspected my blackout was due to being drugged. But this time, I hadn't even set foot in the hotel, let alone had any marks on me. This should be enough to prove my innocence, right? The moment the words left my mouth, everyone just frowned and stared at me like I was an idiot. Either they simply didn't believe me, so I hurriedly rolled up my sleeves. "If you don't believe me, check for yourself. Test the DNA in the room or dash." "Enough," Zachary snapped, cutting me off. "Did you forget? You told them in the video not to leave any marks on you." I was baffled. I had avoided watching that video so much that I never dared look at it carefully. I hadn't noticed that detail at all. Meanwhile, the officer in charge of processing the scene returned to the hotel lobby. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Our tests confirmed that your DNA was found in the items in the room, along with that of several other men." "That's impossible," I shouted. "You must have made a mistake. You should run another test." The people around me gave me contemptuous looks. Not a single person believed me. Still, how could my DNA possibly have been found in a hotel room when I hadn't even entered the lobby last night? Just then, a woman shoved her way through the crowd and slapped me viciously. "You bitch. How dare you seduce my husband? I'm going to kill you." Right after that, the wives and girlfriends of the other 6 men rushed forward and shoved me to the floor. They yanked my hair and tore at my clothes, raining punches and kicks all over my body. All I could do was curl into a ball on the floor, shielding myself as best I could until the officers dragged them away. I straightened my clothes and continued explaining. "I swear it wasn't me. I was home all night with my parents. They can vouch for me. Like, we'd trust your bullshit." "Of course, your parents are going to vouch for you." My hands clenched into fists. At that moment, I spotted Nancy Miller in the crowd. She was a middle-aged woman who lived next door to my parents. Last night, I happened to run into her outside our houses and even greeted her. Without a second thought, I rushed toward her and grabbed her hands. "Nancy, we talked last night when I got home, didn't we?" Nancy froze for a moment, clearly flustered. After all, I had become public enemy number 1, and she had no intention of getting dragged into the mess. However, seeing me battered and disheveled, my eyes red from crying, she ultimately gave in and spoke up for me. "That's right. When you came back to the neighborhood last night, we had a little chat." Her voice still carried some hesitation, a trace of doubt. Even so, just having her step forward and clear my name at a time like this was enough to make me feel grateful. At that moment, the woman who had slapped me earlier yanked a man by the arm and pushed her way out of the crowd. She shoved him right in front of me. He was one of the 7 men from the video. "You've got witness as well, so do we?" She slapped the man before her and demanded, "Tell everyone. Is she the bitch you slept with last night?" He shuddered, then nodded quickly. "Yeah, that's her. I'd never forget her face. If she hadn't thrown herself at me last night, I wouldn't have made such a foolish mistake. Honey, please forgive me. I swear this won't happen again." I gritted my teeth and glared at him. Nonsense. I've never even met you. Why are you making things up? Cut the crap, the man spat. He looked me up and down with disdain. You weren't acting innocent when you were begging me to screw you last night. Oh, and I remember that mole on your butt. The moment he said that, my face burned with shame and anger. Beside me, Zachary's jaw tightened. She does have a mole on her butt. I know better than anyone as her husband, he said through gritted teeth. The crowd burst into laughter. Their scornful, mocking gazes pierced me like needles. Even Nancy, who had just spoken up for me, fell silent. She quietly shrank back into the crowd, too afraid to say another word. More people pressed in, pointing and jeering. A flood of insults and crude words rained on me. What a shameless whore. Look at her, still denying it when all the evidence is against her. Even the mole on her, but made an impression. I'm sure she's been earning tons of money with that body. Hey, sweetie, why don't you and I give it a go? I'm sure I can make it worth your while. Someone whistled at me, and another even reached out, tugging at my clothes in front of everyone. I could only curl up in the corner, hugging myself tightly to protect what I could. Zachary simply stood to the side, watching it all unfold, his arms crossed and his expression detached. His gaze held no pity, just cold disdain. The officers saw the situation spiraling out of control but couldn't calm the crowd. They only managed to hold back some of the more aggressive people. Sternly, they turned to me. One of them said, "Ma'am, regardless of what actually happened, why don't you apologize first? It might help ease the tension." Why should I apologize for something I never did? I'm not apologizing, I said resolutely, but my voice trembled a little. I looked up at the crowd, gaze unwavering. For the last time, I was at my parents' place the whole night. That person in the video was not me. If I apologized, it would be like admitting guilt. Even if the real culprit were caught later, my reputation and the damage done to me could never be undone. My words completely set the women off. They screamed at the top of their lungs, their insults even harsher than before. Who else could it be then? Don't tell me you have a twin. I, too, wanted to know who had disguised themselves as me, forged a flawless video, even obtained my DNA, and created such a seamless crime. What was the point of doing all that? Was it to ruin my reputation and destroy me? I racked my brain, but I couldn't remember ever making an enemy who would go this far. My thoughts were a tangled mess. Suddenly, a soda can hit my forehead, and a dull ache spread through my skull. With the police keeping the women at bay, they started throwing things at me. It's your words against everyone else's. I've never met a bitch as shameless as you. Ladies, if she could sleep with 7 men in one night, who knows how many more relationships she'll destroy in the future. We can't let her go this easily.
Yeah.
Let's give her a good lesson and make sure she never shows her face again. Seeing that they couldn't control the situation, the officers had no choice but to make a decision. "Ma'am, we need you to come down to the station and cooperate with the investigation," said one of them. In my previous life, this was exactly how I ended up being taken to the station. I was detained for a week for disturbing the peace. By the time I was released, Mom had already died of a heart attack from the shock, and Dad had lost his life in a car accident. I couldn't let that happen again. I wouldn't lose my family a second time. Cold handcuffs snapped around my wrists. I frantically ran through every detail of both lives in my mind. Where had I overlooked something? What was the truth? The police car door swung open, and the officers tried to push me inside. The moment my eyes landed on the car seat, a memory struck me, that foreign lipstick I had found in Zachary's passenger seat. Suddenly, everything clicked. I wrenched myself free from the police officer and turned to the crowd. "I got it," I shouted. "I know exactly who pretended to be me and framed me. It's my husband, Zachary Langford." The moment I said that, the crowd exploded. Is she crazy? Did she just say that her husband had pretended to be her? How can a man disguise himself as a woman, especially naked? She's running out of ideas. She's just trying to make up an excuse to get out of this. Zachary sneered at me, his eyes full of contempt. "Julie, have you lost your mind? Is that why you're spouting such nonsense?" The officer frowned and stepped closer, his voice firm. Ma'am, do you have any concrete evidence to support this claim? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to look calm and in control, like I already held all the cards. I cleared my throat and said, Everyone, let's not jump to conclusions. I'll explain everything from the beginning. Last night, I left home and stayed at my parents' house after a huge fight with Zachary. And the fight started because I found a lipstick in his passenger seat, one that wasn't mine. Whispers spread through the crowd. People began throwing suspicious looks at Zachary. He forced himself to look composed, curling his lips into a tight smile. So what? Are you seriously claiming that I disguised myself as a woman just because you found a lipstick in my car? That's ridiculous. I shook my head mysteriously. You told me that lipstick belonged to the new intern at your company. And what does that have to do with the awful thing you did? I turned to the officers, my voice earnest and steady. Officer, I suspect my husband has been having an affair with the intern. Everything that happened last night was carefully planned by him and that woman. It was a setup to slander me. The officer frowned suspiciously and stared at
me.
Ma'am, mere suspicion isn't enough.
Do
you have any concrete evidence? Without it, we can't take your claims seriously. The crowd chimed in, echoing his doubt.
Exactly.
Where's the proof? Just making things up out of thin air won't get you anywhere. She's just trying to distract us. Honestly, these two things aren't even related. I ignored them and looked straight at Zachary. Slowly and deliberately, I said, The proof? It's in his phone. Zachary, will you show everyone all your messages with that in turn? He froze, his hand tightening around his phone until his knuckles turned white. Nonsense. What right do you have to make me show my private messages? I let out a cold, quiet laugh. My voice cut through the crowd like a knife. Of course you won't, because the moment you reveal those chats, everyone will see the truth. We've been married for 7 years. You know me better than anyone. Obtaining my DNA and planting it in that hotel room would have been a piece of cake for you. All of this has been your calculated scheme. You wanted me out of the family so you could be with your mistress, didn't you? You dash. Zachary trembled as if I had struck a raw nerve, anger coursing through him. He couldn't even say a word. The crowd immediately erupted. The suspicion that had been aimed at me shifted to him. No freaking way. Could she actually be right? If he has nothing to hide, why won't he let the police check his phone? But even if he did cheat, why would he go this far? Could that woman in the video really be him in disguise? That won't be far-fetched. I mean, the video quality isn't that clear. If he wore a wig and a realistic silicone suit, who could tell? Oh my gosh, that's disgusting. To justify his cheating, he's gone that far to harm his wife. Wait, that doesn't make sense. The woman in the video looked exactly like her. The officer frowned, pondering briefly before stepping toward Zachary. Sir, in light of Ms. Thompson's allegations and the many irregularities in this case, we need to examine your phone in accordance with the law. Please cooperate. Zachary's face went pale. He was trapped between a rock and a hard place. He knew better than anyone that refusing would be an implicit admission of guilt. Still, at this point, his panicked, evasive demeanor was almost the same as confessing outright. I watched his fists clench and unclench. After a long while, he suddenly raised his head, his glare sharp and venomous.
Fine.
I admit it. I did cheat, but I have nothing to do with last night. She's just trying to distract you. In the end, Zachary finally admitted it. The moment he confessed, it felt like 1,000 needles had pierced my chest. A confusing, painful wave of emotions crashed over me. He was right. The earlier accusations had only been a tactic to distract everyone, to buy time. Until that moment, I couldn't even be sure whether he had actually cheated. But now, all illusions were shattered. Our 7 years together had fallen apart in an instant. My eyes burned and my nose stung. In both my previous and current lives, he had always treated me coldly, never believing a word I said. Deep down, I had sensed something was wrong. Still, hearing him admit it out loud sent a sharp pain through my chest. Zachary handed his phone to the officer, his face dark, his tone almost reckless, like he had nothing to lose. Go through it all you want. I admitted I made a mistake and fell for someone else. But that's it. There's nothing on this phone to prove I set her up last night. The officer took the phone and handed it to the technical team for examination. Before long, the results were ready. The phone contained only flirty, ambiguous messages between Zachary and the intern. Every thread had been combed through, and there was no trace of anything related to last night's hotel incident. Almost instantly, the crowd's anger was directed back at me. After all these distractions, you still try to drag your husband down with you after doing such a horrendous act. You're disgusting. Man, you almost had me there. You're clearly guilty. That's why you're making up lies to fool us. I stepped back, watching the crowd close in, quietly counting down in my head. Just as the crowd seemed ready to attack me, two familiar figures pushed through them, moving quickly to position themselves in front of me. It was Mom and Dad. Mom's eyes were red with worry as she pulled me tightly into her arms. My baby, you've suffered too much. We're here now, so don't you worry. We've got your back. Dad stood in front of me like a shield, scolding the crowd. My daughter stayed at our house all night. She didn't step outside once. You can't just take some random video and start accusing her like this. I gently patted Mom's back, my voice soft and soothing. Mom, Dad, I'm fine. Did you prepare what I asked for? Dad nodded, pulling out his phone and showing a video to everyone. Officer, this is the evidence. This is the security footage from our house last night, Dad said. You can clearly see the date and time on it. The officer took the phone, and I stepped forward, picking up where Dad left off. My voice carried across the lobby. Last night, I stayed home with my parents. We watched TV together, then I went to my room. The footage shows I never left my room all night, and nothing unusual happened in the house. I didn't come out until this morning, when Zachary knocked on our door. When the crowd had attacked me earlier, I suddenly remembered the security cameras at home. I texted my parents right away, asking them to retrieve the footage and get here as fast as they could. I was only trying to buy time when I accused Zachary of cheating, but I never imagined he had actually betrayed me behind my back. The police reviewed the full recording. It played smoothly, the timeline intact. There were no signs of deletion, splicing, or tampering. Most importantly, the timestamps showed that while I was awake in the living room with my parents, the other me in the hotel was with those men. Clearly, that was impossible. The officer frowned, waiting for the technical team to finish verifying the footage, then confirmed in a deep voice. The video is authentic and unaltered. There are no signs of tampering. The crowd's chatter gradually quieted, and many faces showed signs of doubt. How do we know when this was recorded? Changing the date isn't hard. Exactly. What proof do we have that this video is really from last night? I held up Dad's phone, displaying the security footage for everyone to see. Then I pointed at the TV on the screen. Here's the proof. You can check the show playing on the TV is exactly what was broadcast at this time last night. The footage clearly shows me discussing the show with my parents. Do you really think I can clone myself? That I could be at home with my parents and in the hotel with 7 men at the same time? The crowd was astonished. If both videos are real, then what actually happened? Could someone really have impersonated her? Did Zachary and his mistress really team up to destroy her? But there's nothing like that on his phone either. Maybe the mistress acted on her own, trying to ruin her and get ahead, and he was totally in the dark? So, did the person in the video actually wear a silicone suit to impersonate her? That might be it. Have we really accused the wrong person all this time? The public opinion was shifting in my favor, and even the officers were puzzled. If the person in the hotel wasn't me, who could have pulled off such a perfect impersonation? Who else, except for Zachary, the person who knew me better than anyone, could have mimicked me so precisely, down to the tiniest details of my body? Just then, the men who had accused me spoke up. I can say for certain that the person last night wasn't wearing any kind of fake suit. We would have noticed immediately. The crowd erupted into a chaotic mix of voices, each throwing out their own theories, but they couldn't reach a solid conclusion. Could this be something supernatural? No way. Believe in science, okay? It might be. A clone, though. I froze for a moment, standing there as a bold idea surfaced in my mind. I gently tapped my parents and asked, Mom, Dad, if I remember correctly, you once told me I had a twin, right? Mom blinked in surprise and nodded. That's right. You had a twin sister, but she was too weak when she was born. The doctors couldn't save her, and I lowered my gaze, lost in thought for a moment, then asked, Do you remember the exact details around the time we were born? Anything specific? She shook her head. Back then, she had been lying in the delivery room, too weak to know what was happening. Dad frowned, trying hard to recall the events from that day. The nurses brought you both out separately. You were taken first, and I got you settled back in the hospital room. Then, your grandma came running, saying the other baby wasn't doing well and needed emergency treatment. She didn't say what exactly was wrong, just told us to wait. A few hours later, they came and said your sister didn't make it. Your mother was devastated. I was too busy comforting her, and my mind was in chaos. I never even got to see your twin sister. His voice faltered, as if he suddenly realized something. Julie, you're not saying? I nodded slowly, unable to hide the sadness in my eyes. That's right. I think she's still alive. And the one pretending to be me last night was probably her. At my words, Mom's face turned white. Her knees buckled, and she almost collapsed. Dad caught her just in time. She clutched her shirt, tears filling her eyes as she choked out, How is that possible?
Why?
Why would she do something like that? That was our daughter, her very own granddaughter. The crowd around us fell silent, hearing our conversation. I gently rubbed Mom's trembling back, trying to soothe her while pushing past the sharp ache in my own chest. Mom, Dad, remember when you told me our family was in terrible financial trouble while Mom was pregnant? We had loans we couldn't repay, and Mom didn't even have enough money for treatment. But right after I was born, Grandma suddenly won a huge prize, which helped us get through all of it. If I'm right, Grandma must have taken my twin sister, and I couldn't bring myself to say more. Dad's eyes were filled with disbelief, his voice shaking. How could my mother do something so cruel? Julie, are you sure? Isn't this just your speculation? I took a deep breath and looked at Mom, her face twisted with worry, before speaking softly. I wish I were wrong. After all, Grandma has passed away, and no one can tell us the truth about what happened back then. Still, I can't think of any other explanation. Only identical twins can look virtually indistinguishable, and their DNA is nearly identical. If I'm right, my twin sister is somewhere in this crowd, watching me all this time. My gaze landed on a figure standing at the edge of the crowd. She was bundled up tightly, wearing a hat and a mask, but her height and build were almost identical to mine. I had been staring at her for a long time. The moment our eyes met, she tried to turn and leave. The officers were quick enough to block her path. I walked over and removed her hat and mask. Sorry, my dear sister. You can't run away anymore. When that face, identical to mine, was fully revealed, the crowd gasped. Oh my goodness. They look exactly the same. So, they're identical twins. No wonder she could impersonate her so perfectly. Even the DNA matched. My parents stood frozen in place, while Zachary was stiff beside them. The anger and contempt on his face were displaced by pure shock. He couldn't get a single word out. As for my twin sister, now exposed, she showed no trace of panic. She simply stood there, her eyes cold as they locked onto mine. So, you figured it out, Julie. Is this what they call twin telepathy? She curled her lips into a detached smile, but all I felt was sorrow. Why would you do this? I asked quietly. Even if Grandma gave you away back then, you're grown now. You could have come home to us. We could have been a family. Home. She repeated the word as if it were the punchline to a cruel joke, then burst into hysterical laughter. Julie, do you have any idea how I've lived all these years? That old hag sold me to a so-called rich man. She thought she was giving me a better life, but could I really blame her for being a naive idiot? What kind of person pays for a child with no background? What could they possibly want to do with that child? Her eyes locked onto mine, and her tone oozed with sarcasm. I couldn't tell if it was directed at her or me. Julie, you must think I'm a whore for sleeping with 7 men at the same time, right? Well, guess what? Ever since I came of age, I've been nothing but a toy men pay to play with. Every single night. I can't even keep count at this point. I'm way past caring about stuff like this. My dignity, body, and soul had been destroyed the moment that old hag decided to sell me to that man. As she spoke, her gaze softened a little, as if she were on the verge of tears. But Julie, when I saw you on TV, marrying a man with such wealth and status, showered with love, I was, honestly, extremely jealous. We were born in the same place, at the same time, yet you and I have different fates. Why do you get to live a happy life, marry the man you love, build a family, and be loved by everyone while I don't? I hate you, Julie. As I listened to my twin's confession, it felt like an invisible hand was squeezing my heart. My eyes slowly glistened with tears. So, that's why you wanted to ruin me? That's right, she replied. Her gaze shifted to Zachary with unmistakable ridicule. But I've changed my mind. No matter their wealth or status, men are all the same. I smiled bitterly and nodded. I agree with you on that one. She laughed. With a face identical to mine, she studied me carefully.
See?
We look exactly alike when we smile. You know, Julie, you're actually the last person on my revenge list. I killed the man who raised me, along with everyone around him. It's a shame that the old hag died too soon. I was determined to destroy you, but when I saw you fighting so hard to survive, to protect your family, I suddenly felt it wasn't necessary anymore. Her expression softened. There was relief in her eyes, and a trace of melancholy. I don't want to hate you anymore. We're twins. We're reflections of each other. We were supposed to share the same fate and be each other's best friends, weren't we? If I were born to take away all of your misfortune, then from now on, you should live on carrying the light that was meant for me. Live well, Julie, for both of us. No sooner had her words echoed than she took a few steps back and pulled out a small knife. Everyone gasped and retreated instinctively upon seeing the weapon, and the scene descended into chaos. Only I, the very person who shared an almost identical DNA with her, the one who should have been her closest kin, knew what she was about to do. I hurriedly reached out to her and screamed, "No!" But I was too late. In front of everyone, my twin wore that same relieved smile as if she had surrendered to fate and slit her throat. Warm blood oozed and sprayed across my face, tinting my vision red. Screams and shouts erupted from the crowd, interwoven with the officer's sharp commands. It all blended into a deafening roar, so loud and overwhelming that it almost burst my eardrums. The world spun around me, and everything became a blur. When I came to, I was sitting in the lobby of the police station, trying to catch my breath. The officer told me my twin had killed herself and died right at the scene, and all attempts to revive her were in vain. Public opinion flipped overnight. No one pointed their fingers at me anymore. Instead, everyone was shaken by the sudden tragedy. Later, someone dug up a case from last month, involving a wealthy family whose entire household had been murdered. The killer was never found, and the victims were suspected to include the wealthy man my twin had mentioned. When the police investigated further, they uncovered a horrifying truth. The family had been running an illegal trafficking ring for years. They kept the children they bought like livestock, purely for the entertainment of the wealthy elite. My parents cried so hard they could barely breathe. All they could do was hold me tight. Mom kept blaming herself repeatedly. It's all my fault. If only I'd gone to see her back then. If only I'd asked one more question. Maybe none of this would have happened. I held her tightly, comforting her, though my heart refused to settle. I took care of my twins' funeral arrangements and held the service. Staring at her photo, which felt like staring into a mirror, I felt strangely disoriented. It was as if the one lying inside the casket was another version of me. After the funeral, I ignored Zachary's desperate pleas and finalized our divorce. The dead were gone, but the living still had to keep going and face the rising sun. As my twin wished, I would carry my parents' hopes and live fully in the light, becoming the person we were both meant to be.